starting things off with Aaron's Dallas Cowboys. Lots of chatter to get into with the Cowboys. And honestly, guys, I didn't think about this that much, but I saw when I was doing my research today, so many people down on the Cowboys this year just because of how much they lost in the offseason, including guys like Randy Gregory and La'el Collins. So we're going to get into those big losses, but we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. And with you, AJ, what is the biggest weakness when it comes to this Dallas Cowboys offense?
The first inclination people have is to point to these wide receivers, but I'm not on the same page. I'm stuck looking at Aaron's face there and wondering if I sound all right. So we're going to keep going. My thought process here is actually going to be the offensive line. This is a team now that kind of had some, like you mentioned, you had La'el Collins leave. We finally get to see Tyron Smith last year. And when he's healthy, he's one of the best tackles in the league. But, he only played 68 of the last 100 games. So hopefully his health can be okay. We got a Terrence Steele who came back last week. I'm assuming this isn't going well.
You sound great. You sound
fine.
We just can't see you at all.
All right. Well, then I will just continue for the wonderful audio listeners. Terrence Steele last year was one of the better little success stories. He finally came back from being one of those liability type pieces and became somewhat of a, I won't say success story, but a guy who was a nice starter. The issue that you have now is after you get those guys who've been there for a while, you're talking about a lot of guys who are just young. So, we were very high on a Tyler Smith that they drafted out of Tulsa, but they may be using him as a left guard. You can think about Josh Ball, who may be fighting for that swing position on the tackle side. But there's just, if you want to think about the depth they have, it's all very young, unproven, and untested. And you can point to the thought process about, I think it was about a week ago, people weren't happy watching Dak Prescott get rushed in by the defense over and over and over again. So I'm thinking this offensive line is going to need some work. And if you want to point to where I think the weakness is right now, I'm going to go with that offensive line in Dallas. Now I'm back.
Every Dallas Cowboys statement that goes on tonight, I'm going to have to see how Aaron's thoughts are because you are our Dallas Cowboys insider here. What are your thoughts on AJ's assessment of the weakness of the Dallas Cowboys offense?
We talk about offense. It's 3 units, right? Well, you're not looking at the quarterback position. We all know Dak Prescott has been able to put up numbers. We look at Zeke and Tony Pollard and we say that they're good enough, right? They've been great over there, over the past couple of seasons. And then you look at the wide receiver position, which AJ kind of alluded to. But this is a team that's never really had that standout wide receiver. We can look at an Amari Cooper who put up good numbers, but he was never that one of the top receivers in the league. So I think they find ways within their offensive scheme to get guys involved, to make Michael Gallup useful, to CeeDee Lamb be that next breakout guy. So I'm there with AJ. I think it is the offensive line because that's where the most questions are really at. It's a matter of, I'll tell you this. I don't doubt the talent of the Cowboys offensive line. Their offensive line comes down to 2 things. If Tyron Smith and Zach Martin are healthy, this offensive line will be fine. This offensive line will be good. The problem then comes when you have to start moving guys because Tyron Smith is out. And then you got to figure out, well, who am I going to fill with that void? Am I going to move Terrence Steele back to the left side? Well, then who goes on the right side? Do I move Tyler Smith in? And then you start losing this cohesiveness. But remember, 3 of their 5 starters have now been starters for 3 years. Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, and Tyron Smith. So I think they'll be fine. And then you're looking for a Tyler Smith to come in and grow as the season goes on and gel with that offensive line. But it by default, it's the offensive line because they have the most question marks about them. I told you before, big Matt Willetsko guy. I'm hoping that actually he ends up being our left guard in the future. And I hope Tyler Smith ultimately becomes our right tackle. But that's not the way it's laying out right now. But we'll kind of see how that plays out in the future. But yeah, it's the offensive line because they're the most question marks there.
It's fair. I know there are some people out there that have the concerns about Ezekiel Elliott and his regret and maybe some regression here. And we've been known, and we're not gonna beat a dead horse here. We're not gonna continue doing what we've been doing, where we're nixing that narrative of Zeke declining and going on that path. But it is worth noting that Zeke does better when the offensive line is there for the Dallas Cowboys. So maybe that has something to do. Maybe there's some correlation between those two there. But let's go over to the defensive side. Aaron, they lost. Your Cowboys lost Randy Gregory in the offseason. That's a big blow for their pass rush. Who steps up to replace him?
Yeah, this is interesting because I don't know that the Randy Gregory loss is going to be as impactful as people think. By the way, Randy Gregory doesn't get a lot of credit that he deserves. He's great at creating pressure, even though it never equated to the sack numbers. But I think by the signing of Anthony Barr, by bringing in guys like Dante Fowler, veteran presence on that defensive side of the ball, again, it makes you be able to use Micah Parsons in so many different ways. And I think being multidimensional, allowing Parsons to play off the ball, rush the passer, play inside, play outside, I think that's going to be the ultimate benefit of how they create pressure. So I think it's going to be a team effort. I think they're looking for young guys like Sam Williams, the Dante Fowlers of the world who have been in the league for a long time to continue to be able to create pressure on a down and out basis. But ultimately, when they want to get to the quarterback, it's two guys, DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. And there's not too many offensive linemen in this league that can stay in front of those guys one-on-one. And if you double one, usually the other guy's getting one-on-one. So as far as like staple bookend pass rushers, if your team has two elite pass rushers, usually we're talking about you as being one of the best pass rushing teams in the league. Well, the Cowboys have two elite pass rushers in DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. So I'm not as concerned about the loss of Randy Gregory. To be honest, I'm more concerned about his loss in the run game and how he sets the edge and what he was able to do in that facet of the game. But I think, again, with the veteran leadership of guys like Dante Fowler and Anthony Barr, I think they can offset that. And I think that at the end, the defense will be fine.
How are you?
Randy Gregory at times just kind of felt like a perk. I mean, we knew what he was capable of, and we knew how nice it would be for him to be a part of that Dallas Cowboys rush. But he, always in trouble. He finally got back, got hurt, came back, did play well, and then he's gone. So it's like, hey, it was nice to have him, but he never really, in my opinion, got the foundation of that Dallas Cowboys defense anyway. So to lose him, sure, of course, a talent like that, it hurts. But I mean, the Dallas Cowboys onward into the future in that aspect.
That's why you can't pay him $70 million. I mean, to be honest, like when he had the deal with Dallas, I was like, cool, we got him back. But I felt like we had overpaid a little bit. I thought he was worth a big contract, but not that big. And then I was like, okay, we got him back, cool, whatever. And then when he went to Denver, I'm like, I'm not too mad that we get to save that $70 million and we can spend that elsewhere. Money. Yeah. So again, he's good. He's a very good football player. Probably more impactful for guys that understand X's and O's and what he brings to the table than he does in the stat sheet. He'll be fine in Denver, but to me, it's not something that's going to break the Dallas Cowboys defense from what they did last year.
One other note on this defensive side, one other question, and we're going to talk about Trayvon Diggs when we talk about the odds, but do you see maybe a regression? No, you know what? I'll save this for the odds talk. We're going to talk Trayvon Diggs and his interceptions when we get to odds talk.
Now the Sack City podcast is brought to you by Manscape, the best men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered. Tools for your family jewels, people. The Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 6 million worldwide who trust Manscaped with an exclusive offer. 20% off, free worldwide shipping with the code SACCITY. If my math is correct, that's 12 million balls. And if you don't know about the Performance Package, the 4.0 Performance Package has arrived, and it's a game changer. The Lawnmower 4.0, the trimmer is the future of grooming, and dare I say, the greatest ball trimmer ever. Also included in there, you get the Weed Whacker, which is also waterproof. You get the ball deodorant. You get the Manscaped underwear, and you get a little newspaper to read while you're doing the business on the toilet. But make sure you go ahead and go to manscaped.com, get 20% off and free shipping with the code SACCITY. What are you waiting for, people? Unlock your confidence. And as always, the right tools for your jewels with Manscaped.
Let's go to the schedule for the Dallas Cowboys. And AJ, what do you think is the defining part of the Cowboys schedule?
I'm gonna say the first 6 weeks. I think that's a very important time for them. In that span, not only do they play basically their entire division, they also play the 3 of the last 4 Super Bowl participants. Some very tough names, some very tough teams. So if you are to talk about all the questions that are going up against this Dallas Cowboys team and everybody being down on them, I think you have to come out fast and prove the doubters wrong right away. It buys you a little bit of extra time to think. We saw what they can do when they were going up against the likes of Tom Brady, when they were going up against that offense that Joe Burrow and all those receivers have out there, what they did against last year's Super Bowl champs in the LA Rams. They came out with answers. So if they start to slide a little bit in the middle of the season, as a football team does in a long NFL season, we can have people have that faith that they'll get it back together in time to make that playoff run. So I think they have to come out of the gates really strong and have a very, very decent first 6 weeks.
Oh, AJ. I mean, it's not. I'm not like arguing with AJ in this, but I just completely disagree with that thought process. I shouldn't say we. The Dallas Cowboys are a team that when usually on their good years, 8-1, 7-2, and then down the stretch is when we start to question. They're not playing their best football when they go into the playoffs, which ultimately results in playoff losses. I don't think the first half of the season matters at all, and they have their toughest games then. I have them, I think, going 3-3 to start their first 6 weeks. So what? Might be right there, like in the NFC East, what they always talk about. To me, it's the last 8 games of the year. You look at the last 8 games of the year, and they're all winnable football games. They're all games that if you were to probably look, they probably are favored in most of them. And again, you get the Colts at home, the Giants at home, Texans at home. You go to Jacksonville. We know Jacksonville's not going to be favored. You get Philly at home. The only game you might be the underdog, really, in that situation is at Tennessee. Just because, and by then, we all expect Tennessee not to be very good. The Cowboys should be going into the playoffs next year with 7 or 8 wins down the stretch, and they should be playing their best football entering the playoffs, not stumbling into the playoffs and then everybody's picking the 49ers to upset them because of the way they've been playing lately. But they won't if they're playing hot, because every year, what's the narrative? Cowboys are 7-1, one of the best teams in football. They lose 4 of 5 going down the stretch. Well, that team's going to lose in the first round of the playoffs because their offense isn't what it was early in the season. This is about building. I'll tell you, getting the analyst side out of it. As a Cowboy fan, I am sick and tired of starting 7-1, 6-2, and being like, yeah, we're one of the best teams in football. 2-4, I don't care. Start there. And then at the end of the season, win 5, 6, 7 games in a row and show me that you're building at the right time, which is going into the playoffs. If they falter down the stretch again, and maybe they did build themselves up to a nice record to get into the playoffs, they'll be out in the first round again, because we've seen it year after year. The hot teams going into the playoffs stay hot. We saw it with the 49ers last year, saw it with the Rams last year. We see it with the Chiefs every year. Chiefs last year, to be honest, they got hot in the second half of the season, and they ran through the playoffs. Cincinnati ran all the way to the Super Bowl. You don't start hot, get cold, and then all of a sudden back to the playoffs, and you're like, okay, now we can get hot again. It doesn't happen. I'm not saying it's never happened, but look at the teams that have done it.
I do find it interesting though, like, cause so where you went and where I went, that middle part of where I was thinking that they're, will start to falter is about on par, because as I was saying, they pick it back up when they get back to the end of the season. I think about like last year when they were losing games to the Denver Broncos and losing by a field goal to the Raiders, in that little pocket where things just get really tough and then they get it together.
It wasn't win. I guess I don't mean it really equating to wins, because last year they won games late in the season, but they weren't playing well. Everybody was talking about the number one offense through the first 8 weeks, and then down the stretch, it was like, this offense doesn't look good. The defense is carrying them. They don't look like they're ready. They're not really that great of a team. They need to work on certain things, and there were questions about them going into the playoffs. My thought process is the most important thing is when you're going into the playoffs, they should be looked at as a team like, who's going to stop this team? Who's going to stop them?
So, and I know this is dangerous because it's the preseason and we don't really know a lot of what these teams are, but based on what you had just said and what a lot of us probably believe about that last stretch of the schedule, like you said, they're all very winnable games. You look at those teams and most of the time, they should be winning that game. So what does that say if you're already taking a team that you expect to win and should win when they're coming in? Sure, they're playing decent, but if they're not playing decent against top tier competition and the people they're going to be in the playoffs against, is it not just a little false sense of hope that you got these little W's and you're looking okay, but it's against the Dylan's favorite 5-5 12 Minnesota
I just don't think
Vikings.
it matters week 2. Like I said, the Niners, we could look at a team like the Niners last year, who struggled against good football teams early in the season, got some winnable games, and they're beating certain teams. And then down the stretch, like it was like they beat everybody. They just couldn't, you know what I mean? Like when you get hot, it doesn't matter who you play. That's why I say we can go beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, but if we're beating them 24-21 and Dak Prescott throws for 202 and 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and we squeak by, but we got the win, I'm sorry, I'm not going into the playoffs like we're 12-5. We're going to win. Like it's, to me, they should be blowing those teams out. They should be dominating those teams where we're looking at them like we do usually in the early parts of the season, saying that is the best team in football. That's the narrative the Cowboys have to have. Cowboys cannot go into the playoffs with question marks because we've seen it before. They're not a team that can just flip the switch. They are the team that they have to get rolling. And when they're rolling, they're really good. And we've seen it, but they can't just flip the switch. I worry about that. I just know what the NFL is about. It's too long of a season. Cincinnati 10-7, but they were winning when it mattered. Kansas City was late in the season, winning when it mattered. The 49ers winning when it mattered. All deep playoff runs. We can go back to every Super Bowl team that's been. They usually get hot late in the season. Not saying they don't lose any games, but it's usually 5-1, 6-0 late in the season. They're not going 1-3 to end the stretch, or even 2-2 looking, we're not really sure about the team, and then turning it on. I just don't see that very often in the NFL, and I don't think that can happen to the Dallas Cowboys if they want a chance to get to the Super Bowl.
And if it does, or if it doesn't look like that, who's under the most pressure for the Cowboys?
Oh, it's easy. It's Mike McCarthy.
Is it?
There's nobody on the Dallas Cowboys as a player that's really under that much pressure. Part of the reason is why is you can look at Dak Prescott and say, oh man, we paid you $40 million. Yeah, but he ain't going nowhere. And you're probably going to have to give him another contract. Like, because what quarterback are you going to replace him with? You can talk about Zeke, but after this year, Zeke's really not guaranteed any more of that money that people talk about. And he's been pretty consistent. You can always move on from that. CeeDee Lamb's too young to really put pressure on him. Micah Parsons and those guys are really young to put pressure on him. It's right to Mike McCarthy. Right to Mike McCarthy. He's the only person that matters.
He ain't getting year after year after year of mediocrity. If he's not delivering, they're gonna let him go and find the next guy.
Sean Payton watch.
Maybe there's one guy that's a sneaky name, and that's he's not going to be. It's Kellen Moore. Like
that was
Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore has had that offense really good in the early parts of the season, and then faltered a little bit. Like that guy that's supposed to be maybe a next head coaching candidate. If that offense sputters, that pressure could then create where he doesn't get job opportunities and things like that. But ultimately, the guy that's going to pay the price for that is going to be Mike McCarthy in the end. So.
I had 3 people listed in my head for the guys who could be possible answers for under the most pressure. It was Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott, and Kellen Moore, just because of the way that offense ends up looking if it does falter at all. All right, let's go into odds, and then we're going to get into record predictions for the Dallas Cowboys here, and then we're going to get into our preseason ranking for them as well. These are the odds, the prop bets that I've listed for you, gentlemen, and if you guys are new to the show, if you didn't catch our episode on Tuesday morning, we are doing our locked and loaded Stack City bets where our fine gentlemen here, AJ and Aaron, are going to give us their locked and loaded bets that you can take to the bank. You can cash these bets in at the end of the season and win you some money. Cowboys over under 10.5 wins. Ezekiel Elliott over 8.5 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, and Trayvon Diggs over 4.5 interceptions. Aaron, start with you, the Cowboys insider. Which bet are you locking in from this list?
I think the easiest bet is taking the minus 110 and taking the Cowboys over 10 wins. I think they can get to 11-6 with that schedule, especially the schedule down the stretch. I think they're a good enough football team to do that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to take the Ezekiel Elliott over 8.5 touchdowns. I think. Wow. I mean. People are down on Zeke, but every year he's producing. Every year he's putting up touchdowns. I believe there's only been one season where he hasn't put up at least 9 touchdowns total. So that didn't say rushing touchdowns. It said touchdowns. So I'm assuming it's total touchdowns.
I did say rushing touchdowns, though. I just couldn't fit it in there on the graphic.
Okay, so if it's rushing touchdowns, that makes it a little bit different. But you know what? I'll still take the over there. I'll take the over. I think he gets the goal line work, especially without guys like Amari Cooper, maybe Michael Gallup early in the season. I do think Zeke's going to have a bounce back year where he doesn't look like he looked, I guess, last year to some people. I think he still put up over 1,000 yards, but I think it'll look a little bit better than what it looked like last year to most people.
I think it's funny not only that AJ's frozen. I did come up with this to make this happen. Wow. for the time being until he gets back. But wow. I did notice though that one of the bets, and this might be an even more of a lock for Ezekiel Elliott this season. His over under on yards this season, I think, let me find it where it was. Total rushing yards this season, over under 874 yards.
I'd bet $1 million on it.
Yeah, that's a bet right now. Like that is a bet for.
I would bet. I mean, like, I'll be honest. If I was rich right now, I would go throw millions of dollars on that. I get it. Injury could happen, and I could be screwed out of my money. I know I'm being a little facetious when I say this, but right now I would go lay my money on over 870 yards for Ezekiel Elliott in a 17-game season when the man has not missed, but 2-3 games in his entire career outside of the suspension. I don't understand it. And he's 26 years old. I know he has a lot of mileage, but he played all of last year with torn knees up, and he's healthy, he's slimmer now. I don't get it. Again, I don't get.
Well, I like I said, when I'm listing these prop bets, I'm like, okay, I want to do hard ones. I want to make it like so that you do have to think about which one. And I saw that bet, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, let me go back to, so FanDuel has over under 850.5 yards at minus 112.
He's never ran for less than like 970, and those are in years he's missed time.
There's 3 major sports betting groups that have it all listed at 875.5, 874.5, 850.5. None of those bets, none of those odds include yardage anywhere close to 900 yards. So I didn't know, and that's rushing yards. That's just rushing yards.
Give me the overs on all of them. Make some money.
AJ, what odds are you going with?
I was going to tell you, I thought you picked some really good ones there, because at first I was like, oh, that one. Oh, that. I had to second guess each of them. But I'm gonna go with Trayvon Diggs over 4.5 interceptions. He's just too good of a ball hawk. I mean, we're talking 6 weeks in a row that he had an interception last year, and unless these guys just decide not to throw his way, which is possible, but I don't think so, because he also gave up a lot of big plays, which means he's going to get tried a little bit. So I think, give me 17 weeks. I think this man can get 5 interceptions. I'm gonna go with Trayvon Diggs. I think that's actually a pretty easy lock, in my opinion.
I wish Dylan was here for the sound effect, because you just literally went whoop, tossed it up there, and just knocked it out of the park right there for where I was going to go with this Trayvon Diggs talk, because I saw 4.5 interceptions for his over-under, and I was like, okay, which are we going to see this year? Are we going to see Trayvon Diggs become more of I don't think he can become like that big of a shutdown quarterback where he's not going to get thrown to, but maybe quarterbacks are a little bit more cautious with him, and he doesn't get that many interceptions this year, but 4.5 may be a low bar for someone who had so many interceptions last year. Aaron?
I will never bet on interceptions, ever.
Okay.
The over on interceptions is just not something that I would ever say is a lock. The greatest corners, the best ball hawks, they have seasons where they have 1 pick. They have seasons where they have 11, like Trayvon Diggs had last year. I fully believe that he's capable of going 4.5. But when you ask me what's a lock, I don't know. Maybe they tell him they don't want him to be as aggressive this year. So I worry. I do worry that 4.5 might be a little too much. I don't know what that was about, but yeah. You can say, but I just don't. I'm not betting on interceptions. Interceptions are too hard to come by. There's many great corners in the league that don't get 4 interceptions in the season. Look at the top interceptions numbers, and there's many good corners that don't get interceptions.
That's fair. I understand your thought process. I'm good.
Aaron, you did bring up, and that's our prop bets here. You did bring up that you could go with the over under 10.5 wins, and AJ, you might have been able to go with that as well. I looked back at everyone's record predictions from our show during the offseason of what the Cowboys are going to get. Let's see if you guys can match that. You guys did both pick over 10.5 wins, though, so that bet could be a lock as well. Aaron, record predictions for your Cowboys.
Yeah, 12-5. I said it before. I'll say it again. I'm pretty locked in on that 12-5 number. I got them losing games that are tough on the road at Philly, on the road to the Rams, Tampa Bay, stuff like that, on the road at Green Bay. But outside of that, when you look at their schedule, they have some favorable home games, and then some of their road games are winnable games. The one toss-up game I have them winning that is a possible loss really for me is that Minnesota game. Minnesota always plays them tough. It's on the road, new offensive coordinator. They got a bunch of talent on that team. They could be a good sneaky team this year. I've mentioned that as well. So, I just think it's a 12-5, 11-6, worst case scenario type season for the Dallas Cowboys.
Worst case scenario is 11-6.
Yeah, barring injury.
Okay.
Barring injury.
AJ.
So I have him at Aaron's worst case scenario, and I'm going with 11-6. I think Philly will get them. I think they'll falter a little bit in the beginning of the season. I think Cincinnati comes out hot. The Rams, I think, will be a tough one for them. And I think Indy down the stretch is another game that they may lose going up against a Matt Ryan-led team that has a little bit more structure and a quarterback that doesn't just, give it away to the NFC East anytime he has the ball. So I went with 11-6, and I feel like they're around that area.
Yeah, that's so both of you guys kept it consistent with your off-season predictions. I will also go with that. I'll stick with what I had at 12-5 for the Dallas Cowboys. Similar to what you guys said, it's one of those things that their schedule, they do have their tough games, but they also have their cakewalk games, and I think that they take advantage of those type of matchups. And I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to prime themselves up for another good possible, hopefully a good possible playoff where I think they get past one game this season. The playoffs. I think they end up getting past the first round or the second round, whether it's wild card, divisional, whichever one. I think they end up getting past that. So that's what. And you know what I'm noticing here as we wrap this up? Go bet on your Cowboys, on all of the prop bets, on your whatever, because the over under for the Cowboys right now 10.5 wins. That's it. All of us have them worst case scenario 11-6, like barring injuries, of course. But
Right.
That's a lock. All the Ezekiel Elliott bets right now
Just
seem like locks.
Keep that energy. I just want everybody to keep that energy. Because I know what happens. They'll go 6-1. Everybody, best team in the league. The best team in the league. And then they'll falter down the stretch, and we'll have the same deja vu all over again. So just keep the same energy, people. The people that are downplaying them now, don't get on the train when they're 6-1 or whatever it is, when they beat the Rams or beat the Bengals. I don't want to see, this is one of the best teams in football, because they do it every year, and it's so annoying. Like, you have a preseason pick, stay with it. If you think they're going to falter and not be good, then stay with that until they prove you otherwise throughout the entire season. Let's keep that same energy.
Hey, you making Aaron from Austin very happy with your hype for the Cowboys this season. So let's finish this off. Let's move on to the
Austin from Austin.
Yeah, no, I was like, man, Aaron's a Cowboy fan. What city could I tie into that? And Aaron from Austin was the first one that popped up. I digress. Let's finish it off with the second team on our preview.
You did it again. Where are they power ranked? The Dallas Cowboys, we have them ranked on Sac City as the number 8 team as we enter our preseason power rankings. Number 8's pretty high. We seem to be a little bit different than the consensus out there. I've seen power rankings as low as 15, which I'm not mad at. I know there's a lot of question marks, but I think playing in the NFC East helps. Sac City, we put them in around 8. So consensus, number 8.
Thank you. Good looking out. Hopefully I don't forget that with our next team.